Bonjour.
Ani.
Welcome to Enweying, Our Sound podcast. This is our podcast about raising children in Anishinaabemowin as second language learners.
I'm Mshkogaabwid, and this is my husband.
Shkwaaj.
Here we will be talking about stories, challenges, triumphs, and tips as we share our experiences about our household of 5. Beam again.
Okay. Pass my waist. Bonjour, Kenawea. Diamam P. and Dayang.
Nising.
The Abjatuna Bakanat enweying cook. Kai Kenzi Nishnikadek. Now.
Nongom. Indiame. Nising and Dayang. Benojiak. Nabawak. Swimming. Going wika we should see me. And Dapajatu Oshke. Regulation Nakadik.
Enweying makuk.
Enweying makuk. Aha.
Gajate gojing nangwa. Kikpigo and the mushtun nibing gojing.
Zom Gajate Gojing.
Ganamagana.
Neen.
Simtana pitate.
Gawin naman mwenda zimbwezo yan. Opcha. Gawin na bwezo si ishwigo. Bwezo yan. Opcha go Gajate Gojing. Mage dudu swanning.
Meanwhile, Giju namade Gojing. Me je kadang pi bish somni bina bish bamashe gijikung nango dash kuan kut gelbe gijate gelbe gijate
Gana bach benesi gui bijawok. Wiba. Gana bach. The cost and keep bija. P bumsaying Gojing.
Benesiwok.
Oh, gaya no jira benesiwok. And gi we'd say mom.
You would say mana?
Mana. We'd say mana. How? Miigwech.
Mama.
Bijina gi ken gi kendas oshke kedwanan gi gimkan. Jogan. Miuja ngi gendas or ngi abajatun zadai gajad gegamagong shrigungi unendan binish jinagwa osnagwa showan meanwhile zigame sway ganjigan. Zigame sway big ganjigan showan apadek gabiskan or apadek biskan wilkwan meanwhile minikwen bish non and magen gudwaswil gijagat gijate Gojing gagajate meanwhile Waynish gosh to gay ying osnagwa Jaganashi Gema Kwe Gi Jagat Jaganashi Mowing Jaganashi Bamadsawin Jinkadek Ganojita Jinkade what?
Anishkogaabwid.
Nakshik.
Oh, nakshik ingi.
Bangi Gichipi Tendagat. Is it Gayang?
Ingi madabeme Gojing. Ote Shkwaaj and Dayang. Gi ganawabdan. Gi ganawabdana. Mizanate se Gojing. Mino gi bizandwa Ibizinduanan in Bashkjiziganan.
Meanwhile, gigish na dun. Makumimagan. Magay dakog. Gawin in gwiski mijsi. Giave bibins. Giave shkini. Gibi dun wapoyan. Kweshimanan. Gojing. Gi anskwanyeme. Nabelguyonan. Midash. On webing coaching mekwa baskjis kanan ki baskjiske check going to get seen.
Gonna match me.
So did you want to recap? This is Mshkogaabwid Emmeline and
So we just talked about what we did, or we talked about the weather a little bit, saying it was hot. It's hot out now, and it's humid out, and
perhaps there'll be a thunderstorm tonight, hopefully.
And Emmeline doesn't like humidity and
high heat.
Yeah, it was cloudy. We went for a walk.
We walked the dog, and it's funny because people were saying long weekend. I didn't even know it was the weekend, let alone a long weekend, until I heard the fireworks. So we just talked a little bit about, or I asked Ozawa, like, what did we do 2 nights ago? And I figured, well, the kids aren't going to be sleeping with them going off anyways because they're pretty loud in the city. So we just went out there and enjoyed ourselves. So we were just talking a little bit about that and what we did out there. But I don't know, did you want to fill people in? This is our 6th episode of our first season. I think it will be our final one of season 1.
This is our first episode that we've recorded after this CBC article that was done with Emmeline. They interviewed Mshkogaabwid, and it was really well done and kind of gave us some notoriety, I guess, for doing this, and yeah, so we're just glad that we're able to share this more with people, and that our goal was to get this out to people to hopefully be inspired and be wanting to do this themselves, or wondering how they can support other families who are doing this as well.
So yeah, I just wanted to say miigwech again to Kate Dak for the amazing job that she did creating that piece. I wouldn't have sounded that great without her, and I also just wanted to acknowledge the fact that we were not expecting this to spread so far when I originally got the email or whatever, and I was sitting down thinking about doing the interview. I thought maybe it might hit like 300 people maybe at the most, and mainly the language community, or the second Anishinaabemowin language community, and it kind of just got picked up and went like wildfire across Indian country. So was really not expecting that, and with that comes like pros and cons of being shared in the limelight, which I know was going to happen anyways, creating a podcast, but we weren't really creating the podcast to be in the limelight or to be well known or famous or anything like that. It was just to try and connect us or start conversation or share our piece. And for me, sharing a story orally, it just comes way more natural than me trying to write it or get it down on paper. It's just so hard for my brain. This whole journey is like taking me in places and forcing me to grow a lot. And I've just come to learn that, my brain is, like everybody else, is very different and unique, and just learning a lot about myself as we like take this journey and walk with it forward as a family doing a podcast. So I just wanted to say that little piece. It's really allowed me, to like look at myself and what I'm doing and how I feel, and really stick my roots into the ground and hold firm and know what is a limiting belief and what is helping me and what is not valuable for me to hold on to and what's for me to let go. I don't know if you experiencing any of that, Ozawa?
For me, I see a lot of people that shared it and people that are supporting us. So it's surprising to me how much it's gotten out there, and yeah, it's kind of motivating to keep doing it and to keep sharing the message and promoting the language, and not just our language, but I think all Indigenous languages. It's kind of getting that information out there of people to help them understand, because I think some people don't completely understand what it takes to do this, like to try and raise children in the language, and like they don't completely understand how it works or what it's about. And so for some, after hearing your interview, they were like, oh, like I understand now, or it seemed like there's a better understanding of what it is.
Yeah, that was definitely the outreach that I was hearing, like the kind of theme, which is part of the reason why I decided to like take a risk and go ahead and do it without you, because I know as a team I feel a little bit more comfortable. Yeah, so I was really surprised too by the amount of people sharing and supporting. I was kind of like, wow, like that's really nice to know that many people have good, kind thoughts about what we're doing. But you're right. A lot of people, I don't think, understood the degree of what we were doing and the commitment of how we were doing it. And when I decided to do the interview, I knew that I was going to be revealing a lot of myself to people, and there's always a risk there. And so it's funny that you say how it's motivating, because I'm not going to say it's not. There's definitely a pie piece that is very encouraging and motivating, because when you get positive feedback, you want to go harder, you want to try harder. But I also want to run and hide and like delete it all and like curl up in a corner sometimes, because I'm like, oh, it's out there and all these ears are listening and everything, and sometimes it can be misconstrued for like Jaganashi or whatever, and that's not the point behind it. And also everything else that hasn't helped, I've just set aside and say that's a limiting belief and it's not going to help our family right now. So I'm going to set this over here and just focus on our family. Doing the interview and hearing some feedback like forced me to really take a good look at myself, because not all reactions that like we saw were positive. And like it forces you, like I said, to like dig in and take root of who you are and what you believe in and what you stand for. And so all we can keep doing is just being us, being human, showing up as who we are. And it just sort of showed me, for a while, it made me a little bit sick to my stomach to keep speaking the language, because some of the things that have been said to me, it was really hard to speak the language without some of these like things that had been shared with me in passing that were kind of haunting me, because there's a lot of baggage that people carry around the language and protecting it and how they feel about it and their relationship with it, and that comes out in many different ways and many different feelings and expressions of feelings. So for a bit there, I just felt really like not safe in the language, and so I decided to take a little break, and I ended up speaking English for a couple days just to get by. Ozawa didn't break, which is amazing, and I thank him for that big time. I needed to do it for my mental health, and so that I could take a step away from that relationship and examine it. And once I did that, I was able to reestablish boundaries and beliefs about that relationship, and how I could create a stronger bond, stronger relationship with that, and pass that down to my kids. So, you know, these things come to us, and they come to us to help us grow. And by no means am I painting this as a horrible thing. It was a gift. It was a gift within a gift. It was a gift as well as a learning opportunity for me, and it just made us stronger as a family and put us back, I think, into a really good place. So in saying that, it was really, really hard for me to be able to admit that or say that. And sitting here doing a podcast admitting that it was very hard to speak English kind of says something. How about you?
Yeah, I think that, like the negative comments that I saw, they weren't anything new. Like, I've been in language learning for a few years now, and they weren't any comments that I didn't hear before or read about before. So, but yeah, it is, it can be, that's part of the language learning journey as well, is that, unfortunately, we have to kind of deal with negative comments from Anishinaabe people, from Indigenous people, from non-Native people as well. Although they're not there all the time, but like, everyone has their own views on how you should learn and how you should teach the language. And yeah, so it's just part of, you just kind of have to become immune to it. And that's kind of where I'm at, is, if I hear different comments or things that I disagree with, then I'll speak on it. But
and I mean, for me, it's like, yeah, I mean, I've had some pretty hard hits from some people about me learning and how I am as a learner, but it's the fact that we kind of put our whole life out there for people, and like, people are really quick to squash it. And so I'm always just kind of like, did you even listen to the podcast? To kind of figure out what we're about first. And even then, like, this is just a drop in the bucket. So, in saying that, we can kind of like leave it there and just, know that, like, that was a part of the reality of sharing. And I just thought it was kind of important to just, be able to tell the truth, to Bwewin, and practice that turtle teaching. That's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to live out. So I don't feel like I should sit behind a screen and hide and say, like, that's not what we were experiencing. We've been honest up until now, so we'll just be honest with those that are here to be with us. And like I said, this is all about trials and triumphs, trials and tribulations, triumphs, tips and advice, funny stories, our experiences. We welcome you to have your own experience. That's why we started this. And it's been so beautiful. Ozawa, like, we've seen so many other Indigenous language preservers, revitalizers, learners sharing this. I love seeing that. Did you notice?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
well, I also noticed there was a lot of people who were like, wow, this is inspiring me to learn my own language, but it wasn't an Indigenous or endangered language. It was one that was from... so that was also a little bit triggering in a lot of ways. So to those that are reaching out to us, I do want to say I'm so happy that we're inspiring you in that way, but just to remember that there's a big difference between Indigenous languages such as Anishinaabemowin and languages such as, German, Italian, Polish, that have countries and lots of resources and funding and immersion and settings. So I'm so happy that we've reached hearts out there that come from all different backgrounds and cultures and trainings of life. But I do just want to also remind people of that. But yeah, lots of really, like, seeing people in the Cree language community sharing, Mohawk, like, yeah, so it's been Mi'kmaq, really cool that way. I'm just a language learning nerd in general, so yeah, you got any, if you want to share any of your Indigenous or mother tongue language with us, please shoot us a DM at our Instagram, because I'm such a nerd and I will love to learn some new stuff. But anyways, getting back to Anishinaabemowin, we've kind of like made some new developments. Some new developments or some new observations, I'm trying to say, with the kids lately. I don't know if you've noticed or not.
So we'll get into...
Like, have you noticed any big changes within Shkwaaj or Zadai in the last, since we did the last recording, which was probably about a month and a half ago? Shkwaaj, at least, I noticed he's trying to repeat a lot of words that are very big compared to Zadai, who didn't use like 3 or 4 words at a time, or syllables, I should say. And then the English words that I've heard him repeat are words that we've never used. So I know he's visited my parents a couple of times, and the only English phrases I've heard him say are things that they have said, obviously, because we don't, but like wouldn't even be really something that I would say in English anyways. So like Gazagin is one. He doesn't say it with his mouth open. He goes like, mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
And he like Ani, he says Ani, but he'll go, hmm. And he'll say and he'll say ka, right? Like he has very, they're Anishinaabe, but they're all like little hums, you know?
Yeah. I noticed with, like earlier with Zadai, when she was younger, was that I just thought, okay, we'll just speak and she'll just start speaking. But there was a point where we had to slow down and say each syllable for the word for her to pronounce. Like we had to slow down and say the word, and then she would repeat it after that. Whereas my initial thoughts, maybe because we don't have enough speakers around, like surrounding her or that had surrounded her, but she wasn't like just picking it up on her own, like just saying words. We had to kind of slow down and really pronounce the syllables. And so I'm kind of wondering how that, as Shkwaaj, he's going to start talking soon, so he'll be, I'll wonder if he'll be any different, because just physically he's developed quicker than Zadai, like in terms of like he crawled earlier and he started walking earlier. So I'm curious to see what his voice or his like if he starts talking earlier and what how that's gonna look.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned having speakers around, because like I know that's like the hard part of isolation and social distancing, and the fact that we don't have speakers nearby anyways, so we can't even like do a easy social distance. We'd have to travel somewhere unsafely and do something, and with kids it's just not ideal. So I'll just kind of talk about like the other day we had a little meeting between Zadai and a speaker at her daycare or child care center. They're like weekly meetings that were happening since the
like weekly online lessons
since the daycare was closed and with lockdown and everything. And I had to leave both times, so I really doubt that the amazing guy person helping her is listening, but I was crying in the kitchen. I had to leave Ozawa with her because it was like so wonderful. in the beginning, we noticed like there was a little bit more English. And that was the first time I really pieced it all together, that when you switch a number of times in one sentence between English and Anishinaabemowin, she gets very confused. Like, she doesn't know which language you want her to speak in. She doesn't know which one to respond in. She kind of gets stuck on how, like, what do I do with this? Kind of like, I know what they're both called. Kind of, what do I know both of these. I don't really know where to go from here. And so then it switched to the language, and there was a lot more just Anishinaabemowin being used, and all of a sudden it just starts moving and flying, and she's really beginning to imitate the sounds, and he's laughing and realizing, like, yes, she's responding, yes, she understands everything he's saying, and she's, some of the responses were in English, but then after about 5 minutes, I think maybe 5-7 minutes, then it was all Anishinaabemowin, and then I'm just crying in the kitchen because I'm like, it's just been so long since a first language speaker sat with her daughter and spoke. I don't, like, did she ever? Like, I don't even know if she's ever really interacted, because, like, she's never really been on board, like, consciously, she's only really made that jump in the last year.
Yeah, not lately, like within the past year or so. She hasn't really been in contact with a first language speaker.
With just, like one-on-one, or just immersion with just that person,
Yeah, like, and interacting back and forth.
So that was like, again, I was just crying because I'm like, imagine how easy, I'm gonna get upset now, I don't want to. Imagine how easy if we had just a bunch of speakers around. Oh man.
Yeah.
You go.
Yeah, so it was kind of like the responsibility on us was taken off our shoulders for those, like, that half hour, 20 minutes. And it was just nice to see her, like, she could understand, like, everything you said, and it was, he was from, the speaker's from Wiki, and so just, she understood everything. They could,
the dialect.
Yeah, so
I'm just crying over here, no big deal, guys.
So yeah, it was good to have kind of like, okay, we're not shouldered with that responsibility of taking her on, or of not taking her on, but taking on the language, like passing that on to her.
Well, it's like, it's even better because she's receiving, like, the real language,
Yeah.
She's getting, like, the real sounds, and it's just like,
and she could understand everything, and there's like a few, and so she's been to a few classes with him, yeah, and so she's picked up a little bit more, like, just understanding the language. And another thing, I guess, that I noticed was, so JP, our friend JP, John Paul Chalikov, sorry if I got your name wrong, JP, Nigananabe, as I know him as. He's a musician, so he's created some songs in the language, and some really good, good quality. He's plays guitar, so it's really good quality music. So, and it's on YouTube, and there's a video that he just released of, like a puppet or like a monster singing this number song that he created, and Zadai was really into it. Well, Shkwaaj too. He really would just watch it.
Yeah, it was
stop
great.
And watch it.
And it's music that, like, I want to listen to too. Like, I'm not banging my head against the wall listening to, like
you can only listen to so many, like, children's style. That was, I noticed, and she was really into it. So that, like, things like that.
Crazy. Like, she's trying to read the numbers and say them at the same time, but it's such a mouthful for her that she's trying to go, Basic needs to sway, but she can't get the niche in there, so she's going, Basic sway, because she's trying to get it, but she can't quite get it yet. But she's reading the numbers on the screen and doing it at the same time, and I'm like, man, this is like, education, schooling all in one. This is so cool.
Yeah. So it's just another thing that's kind of, and all those videos online that are in the language only, that's what we try and show them. And so that's kind of a newer one that she's really into. And it helps her to see things from somebody else or be interactive with something else that's not us. And I think that's another thing that is helpful when learning a language, to see something else or someone else that's speaking in the language.
Yeah, we even have our own choreography to one of his other songs, Mshkogaabwid.
Yeah, we created a little dance to his other song that he created. But yeah, so yeah, it was when she was interacting with our teacher at the daycare, I think he noticed that she understood what he was saying. So that's when he switched into just using the language.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so then that's when he just used the language the rest of his little lesson there. And yeah, so for her it was like, it was confusing when it was like, okay, this wasn't the lesson, but I'll just say, oh, this is a daban, this means car. And then she was just kind of confused, like, okay, what do I say? Do I say car, or do I say daban? And so, and then when it was just in Anishinaabemowin, because she could understand what he was saying, the whole lesson moved along more smoothly, and it was just good for everyone. I think it probably helped the speaker as well to notice that and to be like, oh, I can do it, like I can do this lesson this way. So I think it kind of opened up his eyes as well, like, oh, I don't need to use English, I can just use the language.
Yeah, it was all just like flowing really nicely, and it just, for me, it was just really healing. It was just what I needed, like from the days that we had earlier to that. And like I think I said to you that morning, I'm like, I feel like, Chimenado just came and gave me a big hug and just said, we got you, because it was just all organically just kind of unfolded. And a lot of times we're encouraged not to read or write the language. And I spoke a little bit about this in the interview, and that's that, like, our mouths have to practice. Like, there's from being a child, you are hearing sounds. You're hearing your parents in the womb, or people when you're in the womb, and then when you arrive here, you hear the sounds all around you. But then you get older and you begin listening to those sounds and trying to differentiate. What is this? What does this mean? What is that? And then from there you begin to understand, oh, this is what this means. This is what that means. This is okay. Like, I know what they're saying. And that's usually where, most learners start to feel like confident. Okay, I'm starting to understand like what this person is saying. And then what happens next for children is they begin experimenting. So look at Shkwaaj. He's like, gazagan inside of his mouth. He's practicing, moving and getting his voice ready, and what's that going to sound like, and what does that feel like? Like, there's a whole process to that, right? And as learners, we don't get an opportunity to really just like go ahead and practice and to constantly get that constructive criticism or that validation of that's right or that's not right, and this is how you do say it. And so for me, to guarantee that I know I'm speaking the words grammatically correct the way a speaker would, it would be to have a book that has stories that were told by first language speakers and then translated into English if it has a translation, because that's the other part. When you have these stories, I've noticed that in picture books that I read to my daughter, I can always tell, and I'm beginning to be able to tell like who's translating too, but I can tell, this was a story that was completely written in English and then translated into Anishinaabemowin, because it's, you know, their mouth is moving in this square, but that's not really how that person's chewing. It's not an actual square. Like, or he said, she said, he said, she said, asked
Yeah.
him, he said, asked him. Like, we didn't.
Yeah,
Go
and
ahead.
it's not saying like the speakers don't know what they're doing,
No, no,
or
no,
they
no.
don't know how to speak the language. So what I noticed is even the top, like, people who've been teaching for a long time and know how to write the language very well, for some reason they'll still go into, like, when translating, and I see this among other, like, all speakers, it's like it's hard for fluent speakers to translate from English into the language, if it's written down, and they'll follow more of the English kind of way of speaking. So, like, the word kiddo, like, he or she is saying something. In a lot of English stories or kids stories, it said, you know, it's used a lot. Like, oh, bear said this, and then the fox said, and then bear said,
And then replied. Yeah.
and then so then you'll get a lot of, like, oh, gikido, like he said, she said, oh, gikido, moko, gikido, wagosh, gikido. So then you'll see a bunch of gikidos in the story, whereas if you hear just a speaker speaking naturally in the language, you don't hear a lot of gikidos. Like, you hear it here and there, but that's just one example of when you can kind of tell that the story was written in English first and then translated into the language.
Yeah, so, I mean, I can't say don't, like, know how all the books are written and blah blah blah, but I know that if there are stories that are like stories from, or old stories from here, it, like, if there are stories that have been said and then written and translated and transcribed, I find those ones are easier for me to sit down and read.
From recordings.
Yeah, sorry, exactly. Plug in here. um, but it's easier to read those stories that have been transcribed from recordings. And when I say, like, read your kids to bed, or read yourself to sleep, or read it out loud, it's practicing that last part of speaking and comprehending. Comprehension of a language is one thing, speaking a language is the next, or is another thing. And I think that the last step is figuring out how to be comfortable practicing and applying, and that's what we're doing here in this immersion setting, right? Like, practicing and applying everything we learn as we learn it, because we're losing, every day is a moment for us to learn Anishinaabemowin, and every moment is a opportunity to listen to a recording, or to listen to, something that's being shared on YouTube by a fluent speaker, and then the opportunities that we have to actually go and see those people. We've made sure that we've used up our time well, using the resources that we do have at home.
And it's not like there's a lot of resources out there, so it's not like I can say, oh, I just want resources in my dialect or where we're from. We don't really have that choice because there's so little resources, like books. So we have books from all over, wherever, whatever's closest to our, writing system, I guess. So using double vowel, but we have books like from Minnesota that were created out there, and then Manitoulin Island, and yeah, so just all over. And for me, when I read, I'll try and follow whatever's said in the book or whatever's written, but I'll also kind of change certain words that maybe we use here or that's more familiar with myself or with our kids that we use. So like some books that we have, they have like day for father and mama for mother. So and then we use nous and then gashe. So whenever I'm reading, I'll just change that wherever it says day. I'll say nous or yes, and gashe for mama. So little things like that, I'll change. But other times too, I don't know. I might not necessarily know a word to use differently, so I'll just read what's written there.
Yeah, and I do the same thing when I'm reading. Well, I'll just say specifically when I'm reading Zada to sleep. Like, I'll usually sit in a chair with her and read her, rock her and read a story while she's laying in my arms. And a couple of tips for anybody out there who wants to do the same or is finding that a helpful idea of being able to practice. So I start at, I should just demonstrate it for you now. I'm going to run upstairs and grab a book and just do it. Inky peeps kabi jaje. So I'm back and I grabbed a book. I shouldn't have grabbed one. It's a Robert Munsch, so we know, of course, that it's English written, transcribed. I like to, like I said, read books that are in... We already talked about this. So I'll just show you kind of how I do this. And this, for me, is like how I kind of gift cadence to my kids. Well, this is usually by the time they're already sleepy, but I'll read the page and the first time through to just, it's going to be rusty. I'm going to make mistakes. It's not going to sound great. It's going to be broken, choppy. So I just read it through, just kind of like you read through a test. You read through the test and then you write the test. So I read through it, then I go back to it. This time around, I'm just, again, getting my mouth muscles moving. I'm not like focusing too much on, where the mistakes are and da-da-da-da-da. By this time, my daughter's like, starting to get tired. So I will generally stop flipping pages and pick one page that has a lot of letters on it. That way, the flipping of the pages isn't waking up my daughter or the child that I have. And I can just focus on going back to the top of the page. Then I do this exercise and I call it like an add-on and take-off exercise. And it's so I start at the top of the page and I begin reading, and when I make a mistake, that's when I stop and I go back to the beginning. And that's so that not only am I going to the word that I've made the mistake on or that I think that I've made the mistake on, but I also get to practice everything up until then. And in saying that, I get to practice a cadence. So, I mean, I wouldn't suggest doing this if you are like really just beginning. It's more of like you wanting to begin to apply it a more moving from novice into intermediate level, but it's just a way to
have your words flow more like a fluent speaker rather than, because when we're learners, we're still thinking about what am I going to say next. And even if we're telling a story, like even myself, I'll like have to pause, or I'll make a mistake and I'll pause, think about, okay, how do I say that right, and then go back. Whereas when we have a story that we're reading, we're able to just kind of flow through it if we're able to read it, if we're at that level of being able to read.
Show you, I'll demonstrate it now, although this is the whole point. I'm going to sound, a little bit ridiculous. So then go on then go on to make it, then go anam me jigat anam me jigat. I've never heard that word. Ningo anam mitjagat. Mamagi kido minawa. Shime, we bidagoshin. Oyak ayawat nimshak. Gawe wipa nimshak widi nebegamik. Gaween kido Matthew. Gio nimshak gi gadam wat o abidut maji biganak. Gagadam wat nin a nabayan. Gawin wea gina ma sin ornine kidon ma aha. Ningo anami jika Ningo anami jika Ningo anami gijagut. That's it. Ningo anami gijagut. So finally, here we are. I don't know how long that's taken me, right? But finally now you can kind of hear I'm starting to get a cadence. Ningo anami. Oh, here we go. Ningo anami gijagut. Mamagi kidominawa. Shime, we bid the goshen. Oh, yuck, ya, what nimshuk. So I still don't really sound like I know what I'm saying because it sounds really choppy. Like I keep practicing and practicing, I'll begin to recognize what the words are saying and begin to, oh, I know what oh means. Yuck.
So I think too, as a second language learner, that because the writing system isn't a set spelling system, it's just a system to follow the sounds. There's no standardized spelling in Anishinaabemowin. So resources like the dictionaries or the online dictionaries, and then books that are written, they'll be in double vowel, but there might be slight differences in writing the words and how, depending on the level of, or how well the person that wrote the book, even the syllables might be separated differently. So as a learner, you kind of have to adapt almost to each resource that's made to say the words correctly. And yeah, so that's kind of one challenge, that you might go from resource to resource and they might have the same word spelled a little differently, like a G might be a K or vice versa, or things like that. So you get used to it, and that's just kind of one of the things learners you have to deal with.
Yeah, and I don't know, I'm not trying to be like toxic positivity over here, but I think that's like, it's a pain, but it's a skill, because like now I know like I'm struggling through that, but it's a lot easier for me to be able to adapt when I'm reading now, because I've just like learned so many ways of reading and knowing that it's the sounds that matter, which is why I'm not like, yes, we should be writing and learning, or writing and reading everything. No, it's just like an added way of helping us get more efficient quicker, so that we can begin passing down the language. And then when we are there and we are efficiently, and there's enough of us passing the language on them, we can kind of worry about the way in which we do it. I feel like there's just too much of an urgency right now to worry about, doing it the way we would have done it 400, 500 years ago. I just don't think we're in the place of the time with the resources to be able to do it that way. And so if we can try our best to just gather what we can and pass it on, then we're in a little bit of a better spot than focusing on only sitting and listening for hours and hours and then not really being able to do anything with that, or take that, or move any way forward with it. It feels almost like the urgency is too great. I would love to just be able to sit and listen and learn that way. We just aren't being given the privilege to be able to do that with the situation that we're all in right now. So also, while you read books from different places, I also don't think it's a necessarily bad thing if you're reading materials from all over and are learning 5 different ways to say one word. I only had to learn Anishinaabemowin that way, and that's how I know I sound like ridiculous half the time, because I'm using different words from different dialects with different, like, even if anything I am saying is right, I know that the dialect is probably not there, or, the sub-dialect is not there. And that's just because I've had teachers from everywhere with different personalities, with different ways of speaking. And for me, it's just like, wow, now I can understand that many more people. I don't only one community, one way of speaking. It's not a thing to look down at or a thing to be mad at, I don't think. And I'm not looking down at anyone who speaks one dialect or one sub-dialect or is from one community, has only spoken. Like, that's wonderful. Preserve that. That's unique. That's beautiful. We need those people who have that gift of that way of speaking. And just saying that if that's all you have right now, I don't think it's a thing to be ashamed of or something to be discouraged about, because now I can go to this community or that community and I kind of know, those 5 words from here, or make sure I don't use we do call over here, and make sure I use, not emotion over here, like, it's just giving me a light in that sense. So yeah, again, I'm not trying to be positively toxic or toxic positivity over here, but it's nice to put a spin on that, because I know I talk really funny, the stuff I do know, but comprehension-wise, it's great. I can understand a lot more of a variety. Eavesdrop on a lot more conversations. I'm just kidding. But elders, beware, I really want to listen to your Anishinaabe. Like, I would never, be disrespectful, but I will totally sit behind the plant and listen to you guys just talk if you let me.
Yeah, that's just kind of our reality, is that we just have to take the resources. So like, even for like when we were talking earlier about the videos that we have on YouTube, or that are on YouTube made by other people, they're from all over the place, and we have them on because it's still Anishinaabemowin, it's still Ojibwe, so we learn from the videos as well, but it's also giving our kids variety of the language in different ways and different environments of whatever the different contexts of using it, of however the person has used it. And I think that's what ultimately there needs to be more of, and I think people will start making more of our videos that are more just Anishinaabemowin only, directed at children, or I guess directed at anyone. But I think that people are starting to notice more that when you use the language more, then it's easier to stay in it rather than to go back and forth.
And yeah, when all is said and done, I have no expectations that either of my kids, I don't expect them to go into the world and go into language work. They can have their own, passions and dreams. But who's to say that if Mozawa and I try our very best and give them everything that we got and provide what we can, who's to say that they won't take that, pick that up, and go it themselves and learn it after that? I won't ever put that expectation there, that I expect them to do that, but who's to say that they won't go out and do that on their own? And I know that as a mother, I've done my job. I've done everything I possibly could with the background that I have, with the resources that I have, to give my kids that. And so I guess in our final episode of season 1 of, what is a season in a podcast, and what is a podcast, and what is this, and what is life, and, this pandemic has been really, really, really hard. And for ourselves, we just want to take a little bit of a break before I'm back in school. And we hope that maybe we can have a season 2. No promises yet. It'll depend on demand and everything as well. But yeah, that our final word kind of in saying, or at least for me, is that, even if I do this all wrong, it doesn't really matter what people say, because my daughter can, pick it up herself and go on. And if you're going to judge her for doing that, I'm not too worried. I feel like everyone out there who might be feeling the same insecurities or the same way, just know that I'm here supporting you. Was always here rooting for you. We love you, and we're here to, do nothing but encourage you to try your best. And if you don't speak your language or you haven't picked that up yet, that doesn't mean you're any less by any means. That's not our message either. It's just that if you are trying, like, we really do support you and created this to create a better community for all of us. So I don't know if there's anything you'd like to say before we head out.
I'll just say that even if you have kids that are a bit older and you feel like it's too late, I don't think it's too late for you. But you just have to use the language like every day and just make it normal. Just normalize it as every time you see a bear, it's not a bear anymore, it's a makwa. And you don't, you know, you don't have to say,
Sorry.
like, I don't mean you have to,
Sorry, go ahead.
you don't have to explicitly say, like, no, say makwa. Like, just when you're talking, like, naturally, like, you know, every day, like, bamapi goaben, or miigwech, or mishin, like, give me, you know, mishinu, like, or mishinwe, give me that, or, you know,
Chichigeda, Majan.
yeah, ambe jada, like, just normalizing it every day, and then just using that. I think that makes it kind of, it makes it alive, it makes it what it is. It makes a connection to your real life. It's daily, you know. It's not a subject at school, it's not a subject in online web page. It's, you know, your everyday life. It's not a Zoom class. You know, all of these things we need that help us, of course, but in order to really connect to it, you need to use it and connect with it daily.
Yeah, so we encourage you to build that relationship or find that relationship or discover that relationship or whatever it is. We're here, and yeah. Gegwa, Anshikancha, Anishinaabemowin.
Gegwa, Anshitke, Anishinaabemowin.
Chimigwech.
Miigwech, Bamapi.
Bamapi, Gwabmanim.
Okay. That's my waist.